Joining me now is Gordon G. Chang. Look at this brand new article out this week by Mr. Chang over at the Gatestone Institute. China is embedded in Canada's Arctic. And then we got a ruling from the Panama Supreme Court. There you go. On the Panama Canal. Let's talk to Gordon Chang. Mr. Chang, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Brandon.
Happy New Year, and let's get right into it. I read your article this week over at the Gatestone Institute. China is embedded in Canada's Arctic. We had, I guess, Mark Carney at one point kind of talking tough about China, and then this week we had him, completely flipping. Tell me what's going on here, please.
Yeah, I'd like to know. Many people think that Mark Carney actually believes that Canada should align with China. And others think that he's just doing this in order to gain leverage in his discussions and negotiations with President Trump. Could be either, could be both, I suppose. But the point here is that President Trump gets a lot of credit for raising important national security issues with Canada, which previous presidents let slide. But Trump needs to solve these problems, and right now they're getting worse. We have a long border with Canada. If we think about Greenland being critical to American national security, well, Canada would be so much more, especially because we know that Chinese operatives are using Canada as a base of operations to assault us. We need to end that. We need the cooperation of Ottawa. And, there's always the issue of trade. There are a lot of things going on here. But one thing is that we do not need the Chinese being even closer to the Canadian political establishment than they are now.
What about Mexico? I've been warning on our broadcast now for some time. I've gotten pretty aggressive the last couple of weeks that it seems as though Mexico is becoming a greater and greater threat to us as a country because of their ever-growing alignment with China. What are your thoughts?
Well, Mexico, I think, is containable, and a couple of reasons. One of them is that President Trump and Tom Homan have closed the border. So that is really important. And that has meant there's a whole bunch of other good things that are happening in our country because the border is sealed. Mexico, she doesn't like us, Claudia Sheinbaum, the president, but she is willing to fall in line. And the reason is that people can see that after the extraction of Maduro and his wife, that the U.S. means business. And it's not just Mexico. You have a very anti-American president in Colombia, Gustavo Petro. But as soon as we took Maduro, Petro said, I want to work with President Trump. So that's a really good thing. And we see the Chinese being tossed out of the region. There's a lot more that we have to do, of course, but things are moving in the right direction. So I'm a little bit less worried about what's happening in the South. I'm much more worried about Canada.
Let's talk about Nvidia. Did I read that they got approval to send a bunch of their chips to China?
You did. I think President Trump is certainly wrong to give those approvals. I think what he's doing is it's part of a bigger grand bargain that China will supply rare earths to the United States during this one-year truce, and that we then supply advanced microchips to China, and that would be Nvidia's H200 chip. But I think China's getting a much better part of this deal because AI is going to determine who dominates the century. And the country that, right now we're ahead in AI, but we're helping China catch up with us by supplying those advanced microchips. I think it's just wrong. I also think it's morally wrong because we know China's going to use those chips for its military, which means we're helping China kill Americans. So I'm not happy about that at all.
And of course, AI is going to be playing a huge role in the military. So when we allow Nvidia to send those chips over there, are we not helping build their military?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. Now, of course, we need China's rare earths, but I think we can get out from under China's monopoly, and we can do it relatively quickly. There's a number of reasons for that. So I think that China is in the weaker bargaining position. So I don't think we have to make that concession. I'm not saying that things are going to be easy for us. They're certainly not. but unentangling us from really what is a very bad relationship for Americans is never going to be cost-free. And we have to understand that we are going to have to bear those costs if we want to remain a sovereign state.
Let's talk about the generals, or a general, singular general, but maybe plural generals as well. What's going on? I read one was maybe arrested working with us in some capacity, but then I'm reading reports that there may be a collection of them that have gone missing. What's the latest?
Yeah, on the 24th of this month, the Ministry of National Defense in China announced that 2 senior generals had been put under investigation. One of them was Zhang Yaoxiao, who is the #1 uniformed officer, the first vice chairman of the Communist Party Central Military Commission, which controls the military. The other general is in charge of the Joint Staff, and that leaves the Central Military Commission, which normally has 7 people, now has only 2. One of them is Xi Jinping, who is not part of the military, and the other is a political commissar. In other words, there are no operational people left on the commission. This is a really dangerous situation for China because Zhang Yaoxiao is very popular with the other officers. And he's, by the way, he's one of the very few Chinese officers who still have any sort of memory of war, because he participated in the 1979 invasion of Vietnam. What Xi Jinping is doing, apparently, is getting rid of all officers who have been counseling him against an invasion of Taiwan. And that means Xi Jinping is reaching down and he's going to find compliant generals and admirals who are going to allow him to engage in a certainly misguided and ill-timed invasion of Taiwan or some other country, which means after the Chinese military is able to reconstitute itself at the top, then the risk of war with Taiwan or some other state is going to go way up.
Now, here's a news report. I'll have you respond to this news report. This is a video. So here it is. Watch this. Let me unmute my computer. There we go. Here we go.
According to his new book, investigative journalist Peter Schweizer reports that thousands of Chinese nationals are trained every year at U.S. flight schools before returning to China to serve in the regime's military. Joining us now to discuss this is Michael Lucci, founder and CEO of State Armor. Michael, good afternoon.
All right, let's go there. Is that a true report? Do we have flight schools training CCP pilots here in the U.S.?
I think so. I mean, we trained the Saudi terrorists at 9/11, so it hasn't stopped. We got a real problem in that China is waging its brand of war against us. They call it unrestricted warfare, and that from a title of a 1999 book by 2 Chinese Air Force colonels who advocated the use of any tactics to take down America. And this was 2 years before 9/11. They actually wrote about bin Laden, whom China supported at the time, hitting the United States. Now, we're Americans and we think we have a God-given right to ignore what our enemies say. So we could lose our country, even though we're a far stronger state than China, because we're not defending ourselves with the vigor and determination necessary. And the problem starts at the top of the American political system, because we have not had a president who is willing to say to the American people, we are at great risk. We're at war. We got to defend ourselves. We are going to have to bear some costs. This is politically unpopular, but I will defend you. We haven't heard that, Brandon. And so, we are, I think, at a point where the Chinese are assaulting us and we're just not paying attention.
Should we be putting as much emphasis on or more on China than we are, say, on Iran right now?
Yes, because Iran is only a threat because China backs it. Now, we've got a bipartisan political problem. It is not limited to just the people who are in power now. This has been a problem going back many administrations, Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives. And you talk to political theorists and they will tell you that democracies are very bad at responding to threats until it's too late. So this is not necessarily a criticism of the current occupant of the Oval Office, but it is to say that it is an inherent weakness in our system, and we need the president to actually start to talk to us, because we should not allow Chinese nationals in flight schools. Yet, until we have a perception that we're at risk, we're going to continue to train our enemies to kill us. We are going to continue to sell microchips that the Chinese will use in their weapons that they are designing and building to kill Americans. This is just morally wrong. Just forget about the strategic aspect of it, which is insane. This is just morally wrong.
What do you make of Peter Schweitzer saying we've got Chinese CCP folks from China coming here, having babies, they're using, I don't know, surrogates or whatever they're doing, having children, taking them back to be trained into the worldview of the CCP, but because they're born here, they have American citizenship, and then at 18 they can come back and vote and get involved in our society. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a risk. Now, the Chinese come here for a lot of reasons. So my dad came here because he was studying at Cornell, and during the Chinese Civil War, a generous America allowed him to stay. So, and that's true today. We have people who are fleeing communism, and they are the most loyal Americans. Matter of fact, I would take them over some native-born people here who hate us. But I think Peter Schweitzer is right about that. That phenomena does exist. So the Communist Party just weaponizes individuals. And I'm sure that that's happening in the numbers that Peter's talking about. So, yeah, it's another risk that we face on a day-to-day basis.
As you know, I was in 2021, early 2021, involved in producing, hired to produce several documentaries. I didn't write the scripts. I was just hired as the studio and the production guy, the producer, produced several documentaries that included people like Mike Liddell, General Flynn, many others, related to elections and the CCP and their interference, reported interference. Now we see the seizure of all kinds of ballots in Fulton County, Georgia. We're hearing more and more talk from people who were involved in that back in 2021 saying, we tried telling you guys this, and now we're seeing reports that maybe indeed China did intervene from a software standpoint into the election. Would that shock you?
No, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, I don't know the truthfulness of those allegations, but certainly it's not going to shock me. You know, Brandon, here again, this is our country. We know how to run an election that is virtually fraud-free. What you do is you have paper ballots put into clear plastic ballot boxes, and those ballots are counted not by some municipal worker in a room which is sealed off from the rest of the world. You count them in front of everybody. This is what Taiwan does. People don't have questions about about Taiwan election results because it is done in an extremely transparent manner. Look, we know how to do it. If we don't do it, it means we don't want to have accurate ballot counts. This is not just a Democratic problem. The Republicans, when they have a chance, they steal elections too. So, it's just up to the American people. And, I think it's 100% behind President Trump saying paper ballots in federal elections. This is, I think, the most important thing that he's doing. And he's doing a lot of important stuff. But look, it's up to us because we know how to do this. And if we don't do it, it's on us. I don't care about the Chinese. I don't care about the Iranians. I don't care about all those other people who may be interfering in our election. These are I should stop. I should get a little calmed down. But the point is, we can stop election fraud if we want to.
I love your passion, though, tonight. You're fired up, and I love it. It's kind of hard for people to hack our election if we go to paper. So we don't like being hacked, and if the Republicans don't like it when the Democrats do it, and the Democrats don't like when the Republicans do it, or the uniparty does it and everybody else on the other side says we don't like it, then take away the ability to hack. Do it by, as you're saying, paper, in public with cameras that can go back and audit everyone and everything that was done. So I agree with you on that. Here is a clip from the World Economic Forum, the Treasury Secretary Basant talking about Taiwan. You brought up Taiwan. I want to get into that a little bit more. Listen to this.
Conductors, I would say that the single biggest threat to the world economy, the single biggest point of single failure is that 97% of the high-end chips are made in Taiwan. If that island were blockaded, that capacity were destroyed, it would be an economic apocalypse. So,
an economic apocalypse if that island were surrounded. if chips cannot get out. That's the Treasury Secretary saying that.
Yes, and he's right. I'm not exactly sure it's 97%. I think it's probably 92% of the world's most sophisticated semiconductors are made by TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. And President Trump, and this is great, and also this goes back to Biden too. He did something good as well. This was to try to bring back to America's soil the manufacture of sophisticated semiconductors. And this is a policy and a program which is working. The Wall Street Journal will complain, as it has, that the CHIPS Act was grossly wasteful. Well, yeah, of course it's grossly wasteful. It's a federal program, but it's doing something which is more important than efficiency, and that is resilience. And Secretary Bessent is right. We need to bring back manufacturing of sophisticated semiconductors into the United States. President Trump's doing a great job on that. And we should support him. But let's remember, this is bipartisan. This started under Biden. Trump is continuing it, and Trump's doing a great job.
A couple more questions, Mr. Chang. China and a space program. How advanced is their space program? And why does it matter? As a rhetorical question, because I know why it matters from the late Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, who used to sit at this desk. Boy, he was always warning about what China, Iran, and others are doing up there in space.
Yeah, if you dominate space, you dominate the Earth's surface. And it gets a little complicated, but the Chinese want to militarize the moon and prevent other people from going there. And President Trump has made it very clear that we're getting to the moon before the end of his term. If we do that, we will be ahead of the Chinese. But it's not just a race to the moon, it's a race for the moon. Because if you're on the moon and you colonize it, especially at the South Pole, you can use the ice there for drinking water, to make rocket fuel, for all sorts of good purposes. You control the moon, you can then control the Lagrange points. Those are the midpoints between the Earth and moon where there's very little gravitational effect, which means you can base a space station and keep it there really economically. You dominate the Lagrange points, you dominate low Earth orbits, even high Earth orbits. And that is important because if you don't control those orbits, you're going to lose a war. So this is really important for us. And President Trump has the right idea. We need to get there first. We need to plant our flag. And this time, we need to actually colonize the moon and dominate space.
How China's economy seems to be in a bit of an issue here. Their military is an issue. Are they in a position to do a blockade around Taiwan, to go after Taiwan right now? And if so, what's the timetable?
Yeah. And how many hours do I have to answer that question? That's a really important question you ask. First of all, they do have the capability to impose a blockade or a quarantine. They practiced that at the end of last month with what they called Justice Mission 2025. They declared 5 large no-go zones around the main island of Taiwan. Obviously, they were practicing a blockade. They got the military equipment to do it. Question is, do they got the leadership right now, which I don't think that they do, but they will reconstitute the chain of command for the Chinese military. Xi Jinping obviously wants to do that. We need to have a more robust Taiwan policy because if they take over Taiwan, it's lights out for the U.S. Because of what he said, that a Taiwan company controls 92% of the world. Well, he said 97, but whatever. Above 90% of the world's sophisticated microchips. So we would be completely out if Taiwan fell under Chinese control. Plus, we have a lot of other reasons, both moral and strategic, to defend Taiwan.
And of course, what we're talking about here are chips that control the flow of water, electricity, medical equipment, large computers that deal with banking and access to our money. I mean, traffic control, trains, canals. I mean, on and on and on. He's saying it would be an economic apocalypse. It sounds like it would be an infrastructure apocalypse.
Right. I mean, we have an economy which is dependent on microchips. It's just as simple as that. We could run a country with a 1960s technology, but you can only do that if not if you have, 2025, you have a society based on microchips and you try to go back 50 years. That's really, really difficult and painful. And also it really wouldn't work in a sense because the Chinese would have control over the microchips. And that's the question of AI and all the rest of it. So yeah, this is lights out for the United States, which
something
is the
goes
reason
wrong
why
something goes wrong in your car today. Usually it's a chip, right? You bring your car in, there's something wrong, they get under the hood, we had to replace a chip. You had a chip malfunctioning. A lot of our cars would have a real issue even running.
Yeah, almost every car on the road would stop running. It's just at some point. And it's just, we just depend on that so much. I'm sure people understand that.
I hope they do. Final question, Panama Canal, the court ruling. I know that China's pushing back.
Yeah, well, this is really important, and this is a victory for President Trump personally. And the reason is, this case was started by activists before Trump came on the scene. But once Trump started pressuring the Panamanian government, Panama's attorney general started to get in on the side of the activists to declare these two-port concession extensions to be unconstitutional. And that's what happened. So this is because of the United States. This is great, but it's more, China's in the canal zone more than just those two ports. They're building, for instance, the fourth bridge over the Panama Canal. If they wanted to, they could drop that bridge onto the canal, close the waterway, and that would be a big issue for the U.S. Navy, among others. So yes, that's a great victory, but we've got a lot more to do.
So this one we're going to have to keep following. Look at this here, folks. If you want to follow him on X, because he does a ton of media, guys, and you can follow him with his latest articles at the Gatestone and other places, at Gordon G. Chang. You got to get the G in there or you're going to be following the wrong Mr. Chang. At Gordon G. Chang, at Gordon G. Chang. And as always, Mr. Chang, thank you for being with us, and say hello to your lovely wife for us as well.
I will do that, Brandon, and I promise I will calm down.
I love your passion. I don't think you need to calm down. These are life-threatening issues. These are major national security problems. So I love your passion because you're kind of the lone voice in the wilderness on some of these issues, and you've been doing this for a long time. And here we are looking at all these vulnerabilities tonight that are. You talk about the power going out, right? Or storms. We just had a huge storm here in the Mid-South. I don't know if you've put into Twitter and looked at Oxford, Mississippi. I'm an hour from Oxford, Mississippi. We missed this paralyzing historic storm by 30 miles, all right? We haven't been able to get out for a week. A week we have not gotten out, okay? Because the ice is so bad. And we didn't even barely get hit compared to what happened in Oxford, Mississippi. It missed us by 30 miles. Oxford's over an hour away, by about 30 miles from us. It's really getting bad. People trapped on interstates. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And then you go up to Nashville, trees snapping, power down, and people are dying. And people are running out of supplies, and trucks can't get in. And all of that, I say, we're kind of watching these things here in the Mid-South, and what's happening, we're going, well, this is just a little ice storm, I mean, it's a big ice storm, but it's an ice storm. Can you imagine if you compare this to the whole cotton picking country going down, right?
Yeah, and that was a really big storm because we got hit too. We were fortunate though. It seemed to me, I live in New Jersey. It would seem to me after the Sandy hurricane that people in New Jersey would figure out that you need to start burying power lines because that's the problem. That was the problem in Nashville, this storm. Yep. Because the ice on the trees. So you would think that Americans would say, oh my gosh, this happens all the time because in our country, we've got ice storms, we got earthquakes, we got all sorts of stuff. So let's put this stuff underground and at least give us some resilience. But no, we're not doing it. And that's the reason why I sometimes get aggravated because it's just so simple to see this stuff. And it's things that we absolutely need to do because, you can't rely on electricity all the time. Which is the reason why I say to Americans, you got to stock up. You got to make sure that you can survive for 6 months or so without the intervention or the help of government. If you're going to have a can opener, Make sure it's one that you can operate manually. You can't rely on electricity. It is simple things like that that we need to do to save as many American lives when we have these disasters, man-made or otherwise.
Yeah, man-made or otherwise. And the frustration, I think, comes from the fact that you see the problems and we know the fix, but no one's really working on the fix. And that's very frustrating.
Yeah, and we have people in electricity companies, they purposefully lobby against proposals to make us more resilient. And they're just following, I suppose, their economic interests. But Jesus, you would think that people in government would understand that we need to make sure that we have reliable electricity supply because people's lives depend upon it. And I don't care if some electricity executive makes less money because he has to bury his power lines or do something else. We absolutely need to do this as a society.
Mm-hmm. And
there we go.
Pictures like this out of Nashville, we'll go back to them. Pictures like this all over the place. People can go watch them. They're everywhere, whether it's Oxford all the way up there to Nashville, they're everywhere. And it's going to take weeks and months to get some of this back. And thankfully, we had some of the electrician or the power guys coming in here. The last time we went out was a week ago. And when we did, we ran into about 7 guys who had their power trucks parked across the street from the restaurant we were eating at. This was over a week ago now. And I walked over to the table to introduce myself and just thank them and find out where they were from. They were all from out of town. One guy flew in from California. The other ones had come from Louisiana, Texas, other places, and they had 5 of their bucket trucks parked across the street at the hotel, and they'd walked over to the restaurant. And they were pre-positioned to be ready to go. And here they are. And it's only because of these guys that the power has come back up for those, and there's still a lot without power, has come back up as quick as it has. But I just walked over to thank them because these are the people that keep the country running.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We forget that. And I'm really glad that you thanked them. It's just so essential.
We had a great conversation. They were all very excited about the Trump administration and things he was doing. And it was amazing. It's amazing, when you talk to people that work physical jobs, that work hard jobs, physical jobs in the heat, in the cold. A lot of these guys, they have zero patience for the waste, trillions of dollars, billions of dollars going through these NGOs and the fraud, because they're working so hard for their income, only to pay taxes to have it given to people that hate us. And they got into that with me when they asked me, what do you do for a living? Because I was wearing a suit and everything. We got into it. And boy, I'll tell you what, none of them sitting at that table were economic liberals. I don't know where they were socially. Economically, though, they were all hardcore conservatives because they work so doggone hard for their income. Closing comment?
Yeah. Look, I on the night of September 12th, 2001, we were in Chicago. And fortunately, on the day after that, we got a car and we were driving. We couldn't fly back to Newark Airport. So we were driving back, and on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, when it was really dark, we saw all these trucks, like the ones you're talking about, going from Chicago to New York. And it's the night that my wife really became an American when she saw the American flags flying from the back of those trucks.
Guys racing to help fellow Americans. Gordon G. Chang. And folks, you understand why he's so passionate about the topic. You just saw it right there. Gordon G. Chang. Follow him. Make sure you get the G in there. Check out all his great books. Mr. Chang, as always, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you so much, Brandon.
Mr. Chang checking in tonight. We always appreciate him. And I hope you will go and visit his X account, follow him, keep tabs on the great interviews he's doing. He's doing many a day, writing great articles and books. You can find his books, all of them, at Amazon. Just go to Amazon, type in Gordon G. Chang, You'll follow them, you'll find them, and then share them with your family and friends. He has a little book out on China. It's not a very big book. You can read it in one setting. Just sit down and read it, and you'll be more informed about China. And again, we're not talking about all the Chinese people here, folks, okay? There are many people in China that want to be free. It's the same thing when you talk about Iran. We have to separate the Persians and many of those Iranians from the regime. So let's always do that, whether we're talking Cuba or Iran or China. Many of these people long to be free. It's always the leadership, right? But if you want to understand what the media is largely ignoring when it comes to the CCP in China and their leadership, get his books and read them. And then pray for the persecuted church and those persecuted in China. All right? We'll be right back.
True beauty isn't applied. It's nourished from within. Bella Grace Elixir, a luxurious, scientifically crafted blend designed to restore radiance, vitality, and strength at a cellular level. At the heart of Bella Grace Elixir lies cat's claw, a powerful herb from the Amazon known for its ability to control inflammation and protect collagen. With Verisol collagen peptides, it goes beyond the surface, stimulating your body's natural collagen production to reduce fine lines, improve skin elasticity, and promote real, visible change. Bella Grace Elixir doesn't stop at collagen. It includes astaxanthin, one of nature's most powerful antioxidants. 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, astaxanthin protects your skin from harmful UV rays and environmental stress, while locking in hydration and promoting a radiant, youthful glow. Experience the power of nature with Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Discover the science behind Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Read powerful testimonials from doctors and real customers who've experienced life-changing results, and explore other wellness products from Bella Grace. Bella Grace Elixir is more than just a product. It's a solution. Visit melissahousebg.com today.